Hey you guys, it's Allison at Common Ground Gardens, and today I wanted to talk about freezing temperatures in the garden. Really, really warm. It was like 95 this weekend, but it's going to be really cold tonight, like 38, 37. So I'm going to run out, cover up the garden really quick because it's only cold the 1 or 2 nights, and then after that it's going to warm back up for a couple weeks. So I don't want to lose like my tomatoes and my peppers and everything. So got my stack of blankets and I'll show you when I'm done. Alright, here's this monstrosity I built. It's not great, but it's going to keep the dew from coming down onto the tomatoes, tomatillos. This should be pretty good. I found a super old blanket with holes and fixed it up. I can't save everything. It's a shame. Hopefully this stays. I only had a little bit of plastic and sheets. I've got like 10 sheets out. I mean 10 blankets out here. It's a lot of blankets, but so I focused on tomatoes, peppers. This is all the melons. Tomato bed. The peppers are already covered because yesterday was cold too and we want to be really careful. What I did not cover is broccoli. It doesn't care. The lettuce should be fine. Carrots should be fine. So we'll see what we lose tomorrow. I'll bring you guys out here and show you. So I already showed you guys how we had a real low nighttime temperatures, and I came out and I covered the garden, and everything worked out great. Both me and my friends all concluded that it didn't need to even be covered. The temperatures must have stayed around 37, 38. So that wasn't a problem, but I certainly don't resent, you know, the 10, 15 minutes that I took to go outside and cover up the garden and save my crops. So, usually what happens around here, we're in zone 6 in USA, and we live at about 4,000 feet, which is high, but it doesn't really affect the garden too much. Everything's fine. But what'll happen is we will get, and I'm sure you guys do too, a night or two in early fall of very cold temperatures. And this year it was cold and wet, and the wet is what kind of triggered me to be a little bit worried about that. So what I learned is if you just run out and cover things up, either with, if you have plastic, that's awesome. If you have just old sheets, I had some old blankets, and they're so easy to clip on top of the trellises that I have out here. Those all those wire trellises and the wooden ones worked great. So I ran out and I covered some of the more delicate things. So it's been such a bad tomato year for me and my friends, and so I have a lot of green tomatoes, and I didn't want them to get nipped by the frost because they'll just give up. So I covered tomatoes, I covered a couple of zucchini plants, just 2, they're good producers. I covered the cucumbers, things like that, things that are more delicate. And if it's something like a brassica, a carrot, they can survive a nip and cold. So the thing is, what I've done is I bought myself a couple more weeks of growing time. And so technically this year I didn't need to do it, but I usually always do need to do it. So it was quite cold the other night, and then now it's going to warm right back up to be in the 80s during the day, to be 50 at night. Totally fine for veggies. And at this point in the year, when you think about all the baskets on baskets that you're bringing into the house of food, you know, if you bought yourself 3 extra weeks of food, that's a really big deal. It's a lot. So I'm happy to do anything I can to prolong the season a little bit. I don't have row covers. I have had no luck with that. I know a lot of you guys do. I'm probably just not buying the right thing, but here in Utah we have really high winds, and every time I put something out that's like a clipped on row cover, the wind just rips it up and just all that money down the drain. It's just on the other side of the yard in the goat pen, and it's a mess. So One of these days we'll figure something out. But so far, I don't have anything like that. So let's talk about freezing and the difference between freezing and a hard frost. Excuse me. Most of us know a freeze is 32 degrees at night. But as far as your garden is concerned, a hard frost is 28 degrees. So at 28 degrees, your little veggies get super unhappy. And a lot of them will give up the ghost, so to speak. So many things, your tender summer veggies, they're not going to survive a hard frost. So that's the number you're looking for, a low of 28 degrees during the night. Now, let's talk about how that 28 degrees actually works and how you decide, should I cover it or should I just give it up? I'm going to turn you around and show you my super sciencey chart for weather here. Okay, so this is a chart like you see on your weather app. And this is the middle of the night. So 28 degrees is a hard frost. That's the number you're looking for. But it's more than that. So here's the middle of the night, 1 a.m. It's after midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Let's say we're starting out at 45 degrees. It's cold, right? Garden's not that happy. What in reality happens, especially, I mean, I'm speaking for me here, but this is weather in general. The nighttime lows come right before the dawn. 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning will be the coldest part of your night. And so let's say the weather called for 28 degrees, and this dotted line represents the danger zone, 28 degrees. So in reality, your vegetables spent most of the night above the hard frost, and they spent maybe an hour and a half at 28 degrees. And so this is the unhappy part. And then quickly when the sun rises, the temperatures go back up and the dew evaporates. So what this means to you is there's actually maybe 2 hours in the night that your veggies would have to survive through a hard frost. And some of them really can do that. Many vegetables are happy with that. They, brassicas and your things like your beets and your carrots, turnips, they can live with that. Tender veggies will not. So ask yourself, is it worth covering the vegetable garden for, 2 or 3 hours of the night? I'm not saying get up at 3 a.m. I'm saying see how long it's actually going to be a hard frost, because most of the night was well above the danger line. Now, if I looked at the nighttime temperatures and I saw that the entire night from 10 o'clock all the way to 8 a.m. is going to be underneath the 28 degrees, then I'm not going to I'm not going to bother covering up the garden. It's too much. It's done. It's going to die eventually. So, but if you're only talking about a little bit of time, this is well worth running outside and covering things up. Another thing, this below 32 is, you're going to start paying attention to your animals as well. I always put a light out for my chickens when it's too cold. It's not that they would die or anything, it's just that I want my ladies to be comfortable. So, when am I going to turn that light on? It's when it's really, really cold at night for a long period of time. So there's one other thing that I keep encouraging you guys to look out for, and that is a microclimate in your yard. And you will learn over the years where you'll have a little bit warmer parts of your yard, a little bit cooler. So for instance, my backyard faces south, and it has the big broad face of the house warming up with a cement patio. So my backyard is a microclimate that's a little bit warmer than what I read on my news app for whether it's cold or not. And sometimes I can gamble with that couple of degrees of warmth. Now there's other parts of my yard that are very shady, like underneath the trees, and they're gonna freeze quicker than what the weather says. So, over time, pay attention to your yard, see how things perform, and keep that in mind, because you might have a damp part of your yard, you might have a very, very warm part, and you can kind of fiddle with things and grow You know, maybe you want to grow herbs in the really warm part and they'll survive the winter. And maybe you want to plant your lettuce and broccoli in the cooler, damper part that's up against a fence. So, you know, work your yard, take notes, and take into consideration what the reality is. Just because the weather says it's going to be super cold at night, does that really mean my garden's going to be all dead in the morning? Well, not necessarily. So keep your eyes out for that hard freeze, the 28 degrees and below, and then also pay attention to how long it's actually going to be that cold. Because maybe it won't be that bad. And maybe you'll buy yourself 4 extra weeks of gathering harvests if you just took a few minutes to go out and cover the garden. So I hope that helps you guys. If you have any more questions, you can either comment below and I will try and get back to you, or you can always look into your local area's extension office for gardening, and they will always happily answer your questions, probably much better than I could. So happy growing, you guys. Remember, life's a garden. Dig it.